Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across time.
Good evening. Welcome once again to Conversations Across Time. For our regular viewers, when you were watching last week, you know we ended on a very interesting note. So let me first introduce our panel again, and then we'll go back to where we left, which was quite interesting. Of course, seated to my left is my co-host, who's always here, Babette Josephs. Thank you, Babette.
My pleasure. I love coming here.
And you all know that Babette's a former state representative, Pennsylvania state representative. But Babby, this is good.
Yes.
This is good.
Interesting.
Seated to your left, your far left, is Senator
Sextus
Julius
Frontinus.
Frontinus. And you know why Babette has to help me? Because I have so many problems in saying that name. It's such a mouthful that I've taken to calling him Senator Sextus.
Well, that's correct. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Seated next to Senator Sextus is the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. Thank you, President
Glad to
Roosevelt.
be here, thank you.
To your right is Grace Ogot, who was a woman of renown in Kenya, known for teaching many the efficient uses of water and how to harvest water, and also a celebrated author, the first female elected to the Congress in Kenya. We are so excited that you are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Ms.
for
Ogot.
having me.
Seated next to Ms. Ogot is King Khamurabi. King Khamurabi reigned, he was king of Babylon, and he reigned from 1792 BCE to 1750 BCE. And I thank you so much for being with us, King Khamurabi.
Welcome.
Now when we left, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, last week we ended on a note where King Khamurabi had made a statement about the United States. We were talking about the uses of technology and what could happen to assure that we would not have this water crisis that we see looming. And so would you said that the United States is a great empire.
The United States is one of the great empires of history. We could argue about which is the greatest for various reasons.
There's no argument. The Roman Empire was the greatest empire in all of history. We lasted 1,000 years, and there's no doubt in anyone's mind that we were the greatest. And the United States of America will be lucky to last 300 years.
So I like your idea. I have a question for you, though. What I would like for you to do is leave the television studio, go out onto the street, and start a conversation with anyone in Latin.
Touche. Very good. Very good.
All right, well, we got it. Good thing God havoc.
And every place
My
you
mother
go,
was-
all over the world, people speak English. How did that happen?
People are still speaking Italian, by the way.
Well, all over the
Yeah, but we both know when they speak Italian.
all over the world, they did, the Roman Empire did was all over the world. The world was just a lot smaller place.
Yes.
for
I'll,
sure.
and I'll give you, to be fair, I'll give you.
And your empire was great too. Don't diminish it.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's like
But-
comparing baseball teams of the past with the present.
Yes.
I mean, the athletes are greater today than they were. They have better equipment today. The science is better today. And you're going
Yes,
to tell
but his
me
product
that
was
the Boston
better.
Red Sox today are better than the
There were
Yankees
no
from
flints
1957?
you may say all that, but there
Yeah,
were
right.
no
We-
flints in
In ancient
Rome.
Rome,
Right.
there were no flints.
We never had to say water everywhere, not a drop to drink. You
It
can
was a
say
much
that.
smaller place with a lot more water around.
There's a
You
lot
can't
of
compare it to today.
excuses,
It was a
but
great
we're
place.
not, you can make a lot of excuses for us, but we're not doing it right. And if we were, we wouldn't have this looming crisis of fresh water. So Ms. Ogot, though, lives in a country where it's really difficult every single day for most people to get water. And it's been solved to some extent
Well,
with
there's
help.
been
And what
movement.
happened? What happened in your country?
Well, we started harvesting the rainwater by building water tanks in the villages.
So the population is more attuned to the efficient use of water.
Yes, but we also have to remember that only 5% of the water is resourced in Africa, and we have to take account that when we think about the future of water and how we can move forward, that 43% of the births that happen in Kenya only happen in facilities, and that, you know, every 60 seconds there's a child dies of a
Water-related.
water-related
Diarrhea
illness.
or something
And
like
we
that.
have to realize that, and in Kenya there's 10,000 children that die from diarrhea that is attached to the water. So
The
we
water
have to
source
think
that-
the
water that
water
they're
source.
consuming.
So when we think about, you know, the future, you know, I was a nurse. I worked as a tutor for midwifery. That's happening. That if only 43% of the births in Kenya are happening in facilities, that means that the other percentage are happening in unsanitary conditions in their villages. And the women that can make it to the facilities, they're probably walking a very long distance in labor to get to that facility. So that's not helping
Are
that
people,
mother at all.
encouraging breastfeeding, or are they, because one of the real problems in developing countries has been formula being pushed by our country, or Western
Industrial
European
interests.
industrial interests, and what do? They make up bottles from contaminated water. If you're nursing a baby, it's sterile.
But and it's terrible. Then they're also pushing these formulas on the communities because of the lack of water. So at the end of the day, the water is life. That the mothers aren't producing enough milk for their children because
They're not
they don't
ingesting
have
enough clean water.
they're not ingesting enough clean water. They're not.
And they're
They
not
don't have
nursing. You have to
access. They don't
keep
have
doing it.
immediate access to the water. They have to walk 3 miles a day to get to the water, and you know, and then they have to walk back to their village. And sometimes this happens more than once a day. It can happen 2 times a day. It can happen 3 times a day.
And so the women can't
So-
do anything useful but walk with heavy burdens.
Which
So
is
if
why
they
it's
had a
important
chance to learn to
teach
read.
the communities how to, you know, repurpose or find another resource to gather water, so that they can tie up some of that time. Instead of, you know, taking 3 hours to walk the water, it takes you 6 minutes to walk to the water and harvest the water in the community. Therefore, you have time to do other things and learn other things and learn other traits and bring other things
care
back
of
into
your
the community.
children.
And when you have to think about the young children and the girls, that because of having access to water and having access to clean water, they don't have to stop going to school, because a lot of girls quit school because of the issue around water, the fact that they can't relieve themselves until the end of the day, so they don't go to the schools, or the fact that they don't have sanitary napkins or that they don't have the way to clean the sanitary napkins, so they just quit. And it instead of our population growing, our population it's staying stagnant, and it's lower because we don't have the water to take care
which makes
of
the work
the
that you
community,
did so much more important. Makes it so much more significant.
I have a little experience being in Guatemala with a same kind of very poor people, brown-skinned in this case, where part of what we were doing was trying to help women and families, and it freed up women. They make beautiful garments, and there were people who could make these gorgeous garments that they could sell to tourists who were just walking back and forth for water. Now they can make the garments because the water is in their village. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So the family prospers, the village prospers, the tourists are happy, and everybody has clean water. It does happen on a small scale.
Well, it's possible to achieve anything on a small scale, but ultimately we're going to have to face the fact that none of this is actually about water. Water is just the specific topic that we're using to address these inequalities. And until there is an honest accounting made for the future, not even for past crimes, but just an honest accounting for the future, the United States as a country will be doomed to repeat the same exact failures until
I
the
agree.
country collapses.
You're right. I have
But
no
that's
argument,
what
no
last,
argument.
last week when we were here, and that's what President Roosevelt was saying. He's optimistic.
Right, I think that's I think that's a doomsday approach. I don't believe that.
That's
And
why
I think to
said-
believe that, it may succeed. If a lot of people believe that, then that'll happen.
That's
But
why I
if you
said
can
from
believe
his
that we
lips
can
to God's
overcome,
ear.
and we can overcome, it's
But
not
you
going to
believe-
take a day or
But
a
you
year.
didn't believe that World War I was going to happen, but that didn't stop it from happening. And
It
from
didn't stop it
destroying
from
the
happening World
population.
War II and Vietnam and Iraq and everything else. But this is, listen, you lived 3,000 years ago. That's a long, long time. You're talking about a history that's only 60 or 70 or 100 years old.
Almost 4,000 years ago.
Almost 4,000 years. We're only talking about 100 years. The point is, this is still in terms of the Roman Empire, this is still a burgeoning empire. That lasted 1,000 years, and my friend here, Sextus, he doesn't think we're going to last 1,000 years. And you
You're not
said
going to last 300
And you
years.
said 300 years too.
No, you're
And
not going to last 300 years. And President Roosevelt, you understood this 100 years ago. Otherwise, why were you at the forefront and using your bully pulpit to advocate conservation of resources?
Well, you're suggesting that we didn't have conservation up until now, just because this person
Up
who's now
until
in
you.
the seat of power doesn't
it's-
believe
No,
in it?
we're saying that
We
you
didn't
You had
have-
to use
I
all your
recognized it then.
Right,
Yes.
and you had to use all your persuasive techniques to get people to believe it, and the bully pulpit, you had to get people to believe it, and there've been other presidents that advocated. I believe your President Nixon, would believe it or not, was the
Yes.
first one to have the EPA.
Absolutely.
Yes. And
but
he
the-
set aside thousands and thousands of
But
acres
the
of
fact-
land.
And beyond that, there were more and more and more regulations to enforce the environment and to enforce environmental protection.
but
Now, the fact that it's taken a step back, who knows what kind of step back it's going to take here, but it's going to take a step back doesn't mean that it won't progress over the long time.
But the problem that your country, the United States, faces
facing now.
now is way more critical than when you were president, and you understood the problem, how critical
Maybe.
it was.
There's no question
No,
about
it's
it.
way
No,
more
I agree
critical
with
now.
that. But there were
Right,
other
wherever you
more
live,
critical
you think
times
it's
than when
the
I was
most
president.
critical.
In the last
But
100 years, in the last
the industrialization
120
and the
years.
pollution of the streams and rivers when he was president was no near where
That's
it is
true.
today.
My question would be, how do we solve this problem globally? Because
How-
I
Well,
understand
that's
that
true. It
the
has- it
president
is a
is
global
saying
problem.
And that's
in the
what I brought
United
up before. It is a
States
global
It is a
problem.
global problem.
that the president is saying in the United States, you see this as temporary. This is going to pass over, but at the same time, there's places in this world where this has been their reality from the beginning
For generations.
for generations. And with the United States being like, just because you can consider the Dakota pipeline, what's happening with the, in Colorado or at Duke, what's happening with the water here, that even though these are technically isolated incidents don't always remain isolated, then they start happening in other places. Like, it becomes a trickle effect. Therefore, it can't just pass because
So what do we do as citizens?
Well, excuse me one second. In that line, hasn't the situation improved in Kenya? You just described how it did, how the women
Some of it.
no longer have to go
some
and
of
bring
it,
the water back.
but some of
That
it
you
is
collect
improving in
okay.
Kenya. It's
Well,
not
things happen.
everywhere, but here in the United States, like, you went from having a flourishing water supply to not having that anymore. So to say that this is going to pass, is
So
it
what
really
are
going to
citizens
pass?
to do?
I didn't
Who
say
care?
that the fact that the water is limited is going to pass. What I said was that this restriction on the environmental, on the environment, the restrictions on the environmental pass. because most people actually believe that there is a problem, that you can have a problem with the environment and with our resources. So as a result of that, we'll take the necessary step. There may be a little bit of a blowback now, but eventually in this country, we'll take the necessary steps that we have to do, whether it's by way of technology, whether it's by way of holding back as much as we can in the use of water. We'll do whatever we can to make
Changing
sure
our government.
that water is going to be here for the
Changing
people
our
of this country.
government would
President
help.
Roosevelt, not to use a bad analogy, but your glass is half full of water. I think our glasses are empty of water.
Well, that's
But
fine.
part of what happened in Roosevelt's era was
Sure.
something he said about us, which I think wasn't true then. He says everybody knows we're having a crisis, and I think that's sort of true. Roosevelt spent most of his career convincing
Trying to
people
educate people,
that
but
it was,
today we know about
and
it.
now we know.
We
So
do
now
know.
we need to act. So what do we
I don't-
need to do?
We need to act, exactly that. We need to take
I don't
all of
agree
these
with
things
you that
we've
most
talked
people
about.
think it's a crisis because the public opinion polls don't show that.
Oh, people are very
Oh, yeah.
concerned
I
about
think
the
they do.
But you know what, Batman?
environment.
I mean, the situation that happened in Clinton was front page news all over the country.
You have over 50% of people in this country that don't believe climate change
That's-
and
It's not
global
that
warming
many.
as well.
It's
So
not
that's
that
that's
many, and
education
those of
again.
us do, what do? We need to act. What?
But
We
Well, the
need
things
to
that we've
vote.
discussed
We
over,
know that. We
all
know
the things
that.
we've discussed over the last
We
Last
all
week
need to
we-
vote.
will help.
we all need to vote, but
Conserving
And
the
we all
water.
need to ask our
technology,
candidates where
education.
they stand on the environment.
Absolutely we do.
You do,
See, if
and-
Grace were running here, she'd have my vote.
Okay.
but we have to convince the people that
But
We
I
can
don't
do-
have a
said in the
that's
pessimistic
what-
last,
outlook on
How do
the
we do
future.
that?
Well,
That
the
will
more
change
this
it.
administration restricts those things, the more people will become aware of it, the more people will act on it, and we'll finally get something
to
done. That's
me-
the way it
to-
works.
But
That's
here's the
exactly
to
problem.
me, as a Roman, the truth is self-evident. And we understood that. I, for the life of me, I don't understand why your leaders and your citizens don't understand how
We
important
stopped
it is.
paying
But-
because they're not
attention.
educated. That's why.
But
We
I-
stopped paying
but I
attention
wanna-
and we let a bunch of boobs run our country.
No, I want to
That's
ask
what
this. I
happened.
want to ask this question because I hear you, and I applaud your optimism, President Roosevelt. But the current administration can wreak much havoc before we have an opportunity to go to the polls. I mean, 2018 is you understand? It's that election is.
It's not tomorrow, and
It's
if
not
it were
tomorrow.
yesterday, it would be better.
And the purpose of us being here and discussing this is because we want to share with our audience and at least get them to think about the fact that our water supply is finite.
It's a
that
big
we're
issue.
headed to a major crisis in search of clean water. And unless something is done immediately, we're in trouble. And that's what I don't see happening.
But I'm with the president. People who
I
are
think
in
people are-
government, we wouldn't stay in government if we didn't believe there was some hope. 28 years in the Pennsylvania legislature.
with you about that.
You gotta be an optimist.
That's right, absolutely.
You gotta be,
And I'm not in
because
government, but I am
otherwise
an
you
optimist.
kill yourself,
Listen,
honest.
I like to think, and I know it's very difficult to see today when you look at this tremendous dichotomy between Democrats and Republicans, how there's no middle ground for anything. But at one point, you're going to reach a strangulation, and they're going to have to come together on something. They're going to have to come together on health care. They're going to have to come together on infrastructure. They're going to have to come together on all these things, and it's not going to take just a year or two. It's going to take more than that. So
Right, 'cause
we have
there's-
the ability to change these people
There's
by
tremendous
voting, and that's what
destruction
it's all
being
about.
done now,
That's what
but
makes
we
this
gotta
country
stop it.
great.
No,
And if you can listen, this would have never happened if more people would have gone out and voted.
That's right.
45% of the eligible voters in this country, or 50%, didn't even vote.
Yeah.
When he says that he has the majority of the people on his side, he doesn't even have the majority of half the people on his side, because most of the people didn't even vote.
Well,
so it's ridiculous to
so do
assume
you know
that.
anybody
So
who
we have
didn't
to have
vote?
to get people
You
to the
have people
polls.
in your
and they'll vote.
country, you have people in your country that say climate change isn't a problem, and here's a snowball to prove it.
Yes,
Give
but
me
we
a
don't have
break.
to pay
Listen,
attention
there
to
were-
And
that.
that was
were
a
people that
person
say
in
bubble
the,
gum is
that
good for
was
you
in a
too.
person, that was.
People are stupid.
That was in
We get back to the bottom line.
That was a person in your own House of Representatives that did that.
Well, that
No,
doesn't
no,
mean
no,
he's
it was in
smart either.
Washington, not in
to me.
Harrisburg, but it
No, I
might
meant
have
Washington.
been.
I said House of
Education.
Representatives. I
Yeah,
didn't
it
mean
might have been.
Harrisburg.
It
Why
might have been. I
should
agree.
this
I
country
know.
be
I saw that.
43rd or 44th in the world in education?
Literacy?
And literacy and education and science and
Maybe
math.
because you
Why
have,
should it be?
maybe because you have lead in your water.
Yes,
Maybe
that,
we do.
that
And
lead
why
in our
do we?
paint.
Because of the lack of education. If we had education, people would be more involved. They would understand what politics is about, how they could be powerful. You can be powerful at the ballot box, and that's what you have to
Oh,
do. And not, my glass is not half empty. My
I
glass
said it's
is
half full of
3/4
water.
full.
That's
Not
what I
half
said.
full, 3/4
It's half full of water.
3/4.
No, we can't 3/4 because we have to save it. It's a scarce resource.
Now,
we can't
You're
have
right
it
about that. I'll
3/4 full.
drop it down to a half full.
Right.
Half full. I don't want to waste any water.
no.
But you know where I stand.
Ultimately, none of these decisions about water matter without a government that actually intends to take care of its people.
Right.
Right.
I agree with that 100%.
we are the citizens of this country. We will form a government that cares about us. Either that or we'll push them into the ocean.
Listen, I want to know who
That's
the
so
Wait,
hard.
push who into the ocean?
The
'Cause
government
that's in
that
the code,
doesn't
too.
care about us. Psh.
I want to know who the majority of the people are in this country that believe that we can take $800 million away from Medicaid over the next 10 years and at the same time give the top 1/2 or 1% of the people in this country
Money
an
they don't
$800
need.
an $800 billion tax
don't
cut.
need it.
Who believes that's the right thing to do? Where are those people? I mean,
Well,
In
we
the
where
know
are
who
they?
they are.
Why do they vote against their own interests? How does that happen in this country?
And-
And education has to be the only
Well,
answer.
the problem, as I see it from, and believe me, there was corruption in our Senate.
We know that.
However,
They were humans, right?
your legislature, your House, your National House of Representatives and your Senate do not reflect the will of the people. If you look at your own public opinion polls on any issue, you could have 70, 60, 80% of the people favoring one thing, and your elected representatives will go another way. So they do not respond.
I think we already had a program on that because those people in the House of Representatives are there because of the gerrymandering that
So
went
as
on.
long as that's the case,
Right.
and they don't recognize the will of the people, you're
I
going
agree.
down.
I
You're
agree.
going down a hole that you won't be able to get out of.
You have to say, what are you going to do about the water crisis? And if the candidate says, what water crisis, you know not to vote for that person. It's not hard.
But what we can also do, in keeping with what President Roosevelt just said, is we can look at how those people voted
Yes.
on issues that matter. Anyone that says that global warming is a hoax is automatically someone that we should not be voting for. I mean, this is our interest. The only way that we
Yeah, but the people.
And
the-
also,
the
anybody wants to
people-
vote for somebody who wants to
The
give the
people
1%.
who vote for those
tax
people agree
breaking.
with them. You have people in your country that believe it's a hoax. They don't
Very
believe
few.
there's a
Very few.
when they go to
Very
take a
few.
shower in the morning, they don't see the water's a problem. They see the water coming out of
In
your shower.
abundance.
Right, and they say, what problem? And they don't realize that it's, as Babette said in a previous show, it's a finite resource, and it's getting scarcer. And
I
with-
think enough people do that we could get them out and get them active. We could change this
Absolutely.
country around
And I think there
really
has
quickly.
to be more, there's always a room for more awareness. There has to be more programs on television right around the time when people watch all television. you know.
We didn't have we only had a republic. We didn't have your kind of democracy.
And you didn't have mass
Yeah.
communications
And-
either.
But we didn't have some of the, but
But you did better.
we
you
did-
did better
exactly.
protecting water.
And
It was
some
Yeah,
ways.
but
It's always better
and we
when it's
understood the value of resources,
Yes.
and and in fact, I know this would probably get your Paul Ryan to jump up and down. But we had people on welfare. We had people on the dole in the Roman Empire
Yeah, but
because
when you
we
got tired of them, you threw them to the
no,
lions.
no,
Get
we
outta
knew,
here.
no.
What about the lions in the
That's
Colosseum? I don't want to hear that.
That's way before my time.
Oh, yeah,
We didn't
sure.
have those, and the fact is, it's no different than your professional football.
That was a lot different.
No, it's not. You took underclass people and put them in to perform
Right.
for the upper classes. Now,
Right,
how's that
exactly.
different? We did the same thing.
We
Give
didn't
me a
kill
break.
them. We didn't kill them.
Give me a break.
We didn't
Well,
kill
you
Killed
gave
some
them, you
of
gave
them.
them concussions. And
Yes.
you gave them a brain
They
disorder.
just died slowly.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't die. They didn't die in the arena, but they did die.
Yeah, everybody does.
The access that you're talking about, saying that people should be able to participate in these forums, that's another aspect that is not conventionally addressed. This is really the beginning of, possibly the beginning of an era in which citizens can practically participate. I mean, the technology is making all forms of participation in government more
Social media.
possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, you know, a town hall meeting that's held at 5 p.m. is not going to get the same kind of turnout that one held at 8 p.m. will get.
No, but the
Especially
thing is,
if you
when voting
tell
is
people to
permitted
show up
on
at
Twitter
4:30.
or Facebook, rather than having to go to the ballot box and can be controlled that way, then you'll have more people being able to vote, and you'll have a better
More
idea
people
of
exercising
their
the
right to
right
vote, and this country will work at the will of the people. Not when you have laws that
it
restrict
still
people to
can.
vote.
It still
When you have
can.
laws that make it easier for people to vote, then you'll be able to have it done. And I think we're going to
It
move
seems to
in
me
that
that's correct, except for one thing. It seems to me it's going in the opposite direction.
Well, it will.
I see
will,
I
and
see
then
the
it'll turn
trend.
around.
I see the trend in your country to make it harder for people to vote,
Pennsylvania-
not easier. I see the
Pennsylvania-
trend in your country
Yeah,
to
well-
deprive people of being represented. And as I said before, the will of the people is not the will of your
just
legislature.
last-
Every poll you take-
In Pennsylvania, we, the Republican legislature and the last governor, Corbett, Republican, signed a bill that made it, erected barriers for people to
And it
vote.
was overturned.
And it was overturned in
And the
court by
Supreme
the
Court last
judiciary.
week-
This was not the Supreme Court, this was in
I
state court.
understand that,
This
but the
was in
Supreme
state
Court last week upheld the lower
Yes.
court's ruling on North Carolina's restrictive voting
Yes.
law, and they voted not to overturn the
So
appellate
we've
court,
got
which
one
turned it down.
functioning branch of government, which is the judiciary, and in 2017, we have to make the Congress function.
Right.
And we can do
And
it.
that can happen, I agree.
Well, one of the things that we did a show talking about separation of powers because you know that the current sitting president has no understanding
Of
the,
anything.
of the role of the judiciary. He doesn't get that, and
Well, it annoys
wants
him.
to control it.
he wants
Yeah.
to control it.
And the media, and the judiciary, and the legislature.
Yes.
And- yeah.
He needs to read the Constitution, like that
If he
Indian
could
fellow
read.
told me.
He
needs
can't
the
read.
could read.
He's illiterate.
Or have somebody read it to him
Yes, that would work.
in
Ivanka.
one syllable word.
Ivanka can come in
Wonderful
and
soul.
read him the Constitution, a paragraph a day.
Well, you know, I want to get back to what actions are suggested now concerning the water crisis. I agree, and I think we started off with the statement from the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the UN saying that water, clean water, is the crisis of the 21st century. So here we are, 2017, and we're living in a time when it is imperative that we do something. And I think that's what we do with Conversations Across Time. We don't want to tell you what to think, we just want to make sure you are thinking. And where we are right now is that we can either look at this and say it's a crisis and we don't know how it's going to be averted, or we can accept President Roosevelt's optimism and say that based upon action that Babette's talking about, that we all get out, we get involved, we vote, we go to forums, and anyone who is running for elected office who does not believe that climate change is real, who doesn't understand that there's a coming crisis about fresh water, is someone that doesn't deserve your vote. Doesn't deserve your vote, because I'm not speaking just for the panel, I'm speaking for all human beings need a certain amount of water to live. So that if you've got someone who's running for elected office who doesn't believe you need water, that person is telling you they don't believe you need to live. Good night.
Conversations across time, 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 conversations